The Ark of the Covenant was such a problem. It was not holy. It was not just a mere furniture. It was such a furniture that people were absolutely afraid of. They couldn't even touch it. If you think everything that I've said about the Ark of the Covenant is inconsistent with what you actually know, wait until we consult the text in the Bible itself about what the Ark of the Covenant is. Multiple texts in the Bible do agree to all of the claims that I have made. For instance, in the book of 1 Samuel, when the Ark was captured, entire cities were absolutely in panic. This was not metaphorical panic in the Bible. This was physical panic. Wherever the Ark went, everybody traveled along with it. Bodies followed it. This wasn't worship at a distance. It was power in proximity. The Ark was not representing God at all. It was simply treated as a location. It was treated as a presence. It wasn't art. It wasn't a symbol. It was simply presence. In the book of Exodus, the Ark sits in the Holy of Holies, a space so restricted it had to be mediated and controlled and protected. And even those who protected it were not your common people. You have to count among the who's and who's of the land to be able to protect the Ark of the Covenant. You did not approach the Ark of the Covenant casually. In fact, you approached it correctly, or you don't approach it at all. If you think everything that I've said until this point is uncomfortable, here's an even more uncomfortable fact. If this Ark of the Covenant were found in Africa, it would have been called fetish, it would have been called primitive, it would have been called an idol, dangerous, or simply superstition. But in biblical text, since it is sanctioned by the Bible, it is considered as sacred. Now think about looted African artifacts. We're talking altars, we're talking figures, we're talking ritual objects displayed today as arts, culture, and history in Western museums. But what if they were never meant to be looked at as art, culture, and history, but simply to be encountered, like the Ark of the Covenant? The Ark of the Covenant in the Bible was not meant for any display. You couldn't even see it even if you were an adherent of the faith. So also are the looted artifacts which were taken in the 1897 British punitive expedition in Benin City in Nigeria. When sacred objects are removed from their systems, two things happen. You don't just lose context, you lose the function, firstly. And secondly, sometimes the presence is gone, it's lost completely. So the question for the looted Benin artifacts is not, what were these objects performing? The real question is, what happens when you take them out of where they rightfully belong for 500 years and counting, and keeping them in spaces where they don't perform what they were actually created to perform? Well, earlier on this video, I asked the rhetorical question, what if the Ark of the Covenant were found in Africa? Would it be called primitive? Would it be called idol? Would it be called dangerous superstition? Well, the Ark of the Covenant, as the Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims, is currently sitting in Africa. It got there through the Solomonic dynasty, via the Queen of Sheba's relationship. Any theology which seeks to monopolize Christianity or any religion at all for itself is an inconsistent theology. Ethiopians were one of the earliest to have encountered Christ. Therefore, Christianity is inherent to the African continent. Africans were some of the earliest active participant of the formation of Christianity on the African continent. Here's a young man who gives us an accurate, eloquent account of Christianity in Ethiopia.
When and how Ethiopia adopted Christianity. Unlike other African countries, Ethiopia seems to have a different historical background on how Christianity came to her. Other African countries are known to be to have received Christianity through Europe. Catholics and the Protestant, they brought Christianity to some of the African countries that we know today. But for Ethiopia, it seems to be different. And then the strategy at which Christianity came to Ethiopia seems to be different. Nevertheless, we'll just look at a few things about Ethiopia. Now, Ethiopia is found in Eastern Africa, and it is surrounded by neighboring countries like Somalia, like Djibouti, like Sudan, like South Sudan, and like Kenya, and then also like Entry. And then Ethiopia is known to be the most populated, or one of the most populated African countries, with over 138 million people as at 2026 present day. And then also Ethiopia is known for its high plateau mountains and the Rift Valley, known as the cradle of man. And now, one thing about Ethiopia again is that Ethiopia is known for its religiosity. It seems to have a great regard for religion. I believe it is because of how Christianity came to us. So we're going to be looking at a few things on that. Now, Ethiopia has some of the most important and unique religious artifacts in the world. Of course, that is because it is shaped by its long Christian tradition, especially the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. And one of the oldest, that's one of the oldest Christian churches globally. And now here are some of the artifacts that is found in Ethiopia. Number one, like the Ark of the Covenant, which is called the Tabot. And then secondly, the Lalibela rock-hewn Christian artifacts. And then the Ethiopian processional crosses, the illuminated manuscripts, the sacred icons and paintings, the prayer sticks, and all of that. Now, Ethiopia officially adopted Christianity in 4th century AD, around 330 to 340 AD, during the reign of King Ezana of the kingdom of Askum. All right, so this is how it actually happened. A Christian missionary named Frumentia played a key role. He was originally from the Eastern Mediterranean, and he came to Askum, where he gained influence at the royal court, and then he later converted King Ezana to Christianity. So proximity or relationship or the office he occupied gave him the leverage to preach or to introduce Christianity to Ethiopia. And thank God it was actually accepted. And so this is important because Ethiopia became one of the first countries in the world to adopt Christianity as a state religion. Let me say that again. It is one of the first, one of the first countries in the world to receive Christianity as a state religion, shortly after the Roman Empire under Constantine the Great. And then it led to the creation of the Ethiopian Tewahedo Church, and that's the Orthodox there. And then Christianity has remained central to Ethiopian culture ever since. That's over 1,600 years from now. So I'm going to show you something. There's a bit of a difference here between the Ethiopian Christianity and also the European Christianity. I often said to people that to some extent, when you see some of the practices, Christian practices in some of the African countries today, you will know that some of those practices are not actually a derivative of the truth, excavated from the Bible itself. I believe that some of the practices was given us by the people who actually introduced Christianity to some of these African countries. So we're just going to look at a few things that differentiate the Ethiopian Christianity and then also the European Christianity. This is very, very interesting. Now, do not forget that Christianity is about Christ. Now, it is interesting that from the looks of things here, it has been personalized, and then it's almost like Christ is out of the whole picture. All right, so Ethiopian Christianity is centered in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, developed in relative isolation from Europe for centuries. And then because of that, it looks quite different from European forms like Roman Catholicism or Protestantism. This is interesting. And here's the bit of a difference. I'll just mention a few of them. Number one, theology, which is a study of the nature of Christ. Now, Ethiopian Christianity follows miaphysitism. That's the belief that Christ has one united nature that is both divine and human together. Of course, it is said that in the book of John, chapter 1, that the word became flesh, and the flesh dwelt amongst us. The Bible says we saw him, we beheld his glory as of the only begotten of the Father. So inasmuch as he had a divine nature, we also saw that his earthly work here, we saw that he had a human nature. Now, this differs from the doctrine defined at the Council of Chalcedon, which most European churches accepted, teaching two distinct nature, that's divine and also human. Now, because of this, Ethiopia is part of the Oriental Orthodox family, not the Eastern Orthodox or Catholic churches. And then secondly, the second difference here we're going to look at is the biblical canon. And it means the books of the Bible. Now, the Ethiopian Bible is larger than European Bible. Now, we always know that the Bible we're actually reading is not complete. That's a fact for sure. All right, but then here we were discovering that the Ethiopian Bible is larger than European Bible, and it includes unique books like the Book of Enoch and then the Book of Jubilees. And these books are not found in most European Christian tradition. This doesn't actually, it's not an attempt to steer a debate, but let's just move forward. Okay, so on language and worship style, services are conducted in Ge'ez. That's an ancient traditional language, and worship involves chanting, drumming, sistrum, and then metal rattle instruments, and then processions. And the European churches tend to use local languages and less rhythmic, more structured liturgy. And then fourth, the Jewish influences. Now, Ethiopian Christianity keeps practices that resemble the Old Testament. Observance of both Saturday and Sunday as holy days, and also dietary laws are similar to the kosher. And then circumcision is practiced, and then strong connections to the Ark of the Covenant tradition through Tabot. But then the European Christianity generally moved away from most Jewish law. And then the fifth one here is church architecture and sacred object. Now, the Ethiopian churches often have secular designs with sacred inner sanctuaries. Every church contains a tabot representative of the ark, and then famous sites like the Lalibela are carved, from rock. And then whereas the European churches are usually basilical, and then or cathedrals without anything equivalent to the tablet. Now it is said that the Ethiopian churches, Ethiopian Christianity, they practice fasting and religious discipline. They could fast for 180 to 250 fasting days per year, and then whereas no meat or dairy during this fast, whereas the European traditions generally have fewer and lesser strict fasting. Now in all of these differences are seen. One of the things that is missing in all of this is that we do not see a full attention given to the person of Christ. Now, it is possible to be in keeping with laws, whether past, present, and then that has a picture of Christianity itself, and yet one will not know Christ himself. The Bible speaks in the book of 1 Timothy, it says that God desires that all men be saved and to come to the knowledge of the truth. Now, the knowledge of the truth is Christ himself. The Bible says that is the mediator between man and God. So no matter what somebody knows about Christianity, if our knowledge does not take us to understanding, knowing Christ personally, then almost everything is vain. From the looks of things right here, you would see that certain things are actually self-developed, certain things are actually more like philosophies of men or traditions and all of that. Now, this is how actually how Christianity was adopted in Ethiopia.